What's going on, guys? UCJ4U2C here, and today we are doing a Dragon's Dogma 2 review. This is a review in progress as I have not finished the game yet, but I do plan on going back and revisiting this review and making another one as soon as I do complete the story. I don't know when that will be, but soon. Anyway, let's get this review started. So, according to the description on Steam, Dragon's Dogma 2 is a single-player, narrative-driven action RPG that challenges the players to choose their own experience, from the appearance of their arisen, their vocation, their party, how to approach different situations and more in a truly immersive fantasy world. As far as my playtime goes, I have found this to be an excellent description of what you can expect from this game. I do want to preface by saying I did not play Dragon's Dogma 1, I'm sorry, so I had no idea what to expect going into this game, besides what had been marketed. The new player experience was kind of hit or miss for me. Your new game begins with a cutscene introducing you to Vermund, a city which is destined to be led by one called the Arisen. I don't want to spoil anything because it was a mysterious and intriguing cutscene to start out the game, so you'll just have to go see it yourself. After the cutscene, you are thrown into the character creator to either fully build your character or select the character you made prior to launch with the character creator tool. You do choose your vocation or class here as well, having 4 choices to begin. You're stationed in a mining camp to begin, where there seem to be dozens of others who are stuck here to labor just as you are. You were instructed to haul some boulders for a short time before chaos ensues from the camp falling under attack. Because of this, the game teaches you the little combat controls you're capable of using at this time, and you proceed on your adventure from there. As the game sets you free to the world, I found there isn't much guidance given. As far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there isn't a special marker for the main quest line, and unless you really keep up with the story and the direction it's going, it can be really hard to keep track of which quest is which. Pawns were initially a confusing concept to me. I didn't know how I felt about 1 permanent pawn and 2 temporary pawns. It was kind of weird trying to balance the 2 initially and understand why the temporary ones were necessary. But as I went on, I understood, oh, having a full party is very useful and they are able to synergize well. So that was confusing initially, but I did understand that as I went on. There are some tutorials in the form of game pausing pop-ups, and many of those I did find helpful. However, there were a few that seemed like too much information thrown at you at one time, some of them having 3 or 4 pages of info in the middle of interactions. Some of those were hard to understand, but when they were short and concise, it was nice for the quick little info that I did need. One thing I didn't fully enjoy at the new player experience was the fact that they gave us a mini-map and plenty of waypoints, and I guess this isn't really fully a new player experience issue, it's a whole game issue. But we have a mini-map, but there's actually no path shown on the map. You can't track a quest object and have it show you where to go. You kind of have to either orient yourself using the compass or just look at your map pretty often to check which path to go on. In this instance, I would honestly rather have no mini-map, because if there's not going to be a way to show where to go, even just as an option, I'd rather just have no mini-map and to find the route myself. On a positive note, I am a fan of having the face buttons on the screen for the first while of the playtime. It's nice to have a quick visual reference when you're still learning the controls. I have since disabled the interface though, as I feel comfortable with the controls and my skills now. I remember where I mapped certain abilities and whatnot, so that is a good thing to start, but as you go on, I think you can also do the same thing if you want to and disable that HUD. On to the mechanics. I did play using a PS5 controller for all of my playtime. I did start initially with keyboard and mouse just to try it, and I played about 10 minutes and decided that that was not the way. So, as for combat, you do have a light and a heavy attack. You have skills bound as a second menu, toggled using R1. I believe that was L1 by default, but I couldn't stand having my initial fighter vocation block button not be L1 like other melee games, so I swapped them. Each vocation has its own unique vocation ability, which is bound to R1 by default. Fighter has a block, thief has dodge roll, etc. There is a stagger and weak point mechanic to this game. For example, the Saurians, they're kind of like these reptile lizard dudes. They can get their tail chopped off and they get stunned for execution when you do that. It just depends on the enemy, really. You won't find many of these weak points without trying new things, so experiment with your combat. You will know if you hit a weak point by a higher pitched sound on hit. Typically, the head is a good bet, but there are many other options on some enemies. It kind of feels like Monster Hunter. I never really played much of that, but I did know that you could chop off tails and different things like that depending on the creature. Your pawns will alert you to some of these weak points as well. As long as you listen to them, they will give you some hints on what does what.
If we are to bear this demon, we must do whatever we can to knock it off balance.
Speaking of pawns, pawn summoning occurs at Rift Stones, giving you different choices of classes and levels that you can hire. They all have different skill sets and personalities, so you'll have to pick and choose who you want to synergize within your team. Continuing on the pawns, you do have pawn commands on the D-pad, such as go, help, there's wait. There are some times where your pawn will say,
Just record. I found a treasure chest near here during my travels beyond the rift. May I show you to its location?
You can use the go command to allow them to lead you. If you need heals, if you have a mage, you can use the help command. They will come straight to you, drop a heal bubble. It's super nice. They're pretty responsive about it. They're very fast, so that's pretty cool. There is more or less a Pokemon-esque type charting style of weaknesses in Dragon's Dogma 2. Goblins are weak to fire, electricity will do more to drenched enemies, all sorts of different things. You'll learn a lot of these from your pawns chiming in before or during fights, kind of similar to the weak points. The clamber and the mantle mechanic, clamber mantle, whatever you want to call it, it's really slick. It allows for a lot of seamless climbing across rocks and hills, and you can find a lot of chests in out-of-the-way areas. There is potential for a sickness called the Dragon's Plague, which functions similar to Sekiro's Dragon Rot. You will hear your pawns discuss this as you summon them from the rift, but so far in my playtime I haven't had it happen yet. From what I've researched, if your pawns catch this plague, they will start to cough, stop responding to commands, and a few other things. And the only way to remove this plague for temporary pawns is to swap them out, and for your permanent pawn, I heard you can throw them into deep water to kill them and respawn them from a rift stone. I don't know, you just have to figure it out yourself. Otherwise, if you sleep in an inn while a pawn has Dragon Plague, you will wake up with everybody in that city or village dead. So, progression here, it's actually pretty smooth. As you play, you will level up your vocation. With these vocation levels comes discipline points labeled as DCP in-game. You use these points to unlock new active skills and passive skills, as well as augments, which also give some nice passive bonuses. You're able to swap your vocation at any time, unlocking new ones periodically as you talk to people. You can only use certain armor and weapons on each vocation, with one exception being the Warfarer, which is a late game vocation that allows you to use everything at the cost of some lower stats. As I said, this is a review in progress. I haven't actually unlocked the Warfarer. I'm very excited to get there. I've just been taking my time exploring and doing all the side quests. I just love the exploration factor. So as soon as I get the Warfarer, as I said before, I will probably do a follow-up video to this and maybe showcase the Warfarer a little bit, some of the end game. But for now, we're still going. Your permanent pawn also levels up their vocation, and you dictate their skill unlocks as well, so don't forget to spend their points when you can. Their vocation can likewise be switched out at any time, so feel free to change them out if you want to synergize differently with different pawns that you hire. Do whatever you want. Should you venture out with two temporary pawns as well, which I do recommend all the time, they will not level up alongside you and will need to be swapped out as you go. I felt personally that this kept my experience fresh as I progressed through the ranks and had to swap pawns out as I went. As I said, it was a bit confusing to start because I didn't know why that was a mechanic. I just never heard of something like that. But as I went on, I did really enjoy the different personalities of pawns, and I just think swapping them out was nice. Continuing on the progression, you'll earn gold on your journey, which can be spent in cities and with certain traders for certain selections of armor, weapons, consumables, and lodging. Personally, I felt the flow of gold income was pretty fair while just doing everyday questing and scavenging. You get plenty from chests and enemy item drops, quests, different things, so it's not too bad. The gold economy, I feel, is pretty fair. In regards to area progression, you will explore much of the green and beautiful area around the city of Vermund before venturing to Batal, which is a lot of sand and rock with new enemy types. Batal has its own main city called Back Batal, and many of the economy here seems to be a little more expensive than Vermund. For example, the inn inside Vermund costs 2,000 gold to sleep. One of the two inns in Back Batal costs 10,000 gold to sleep, which that's kind of crazy. There is another less fancy in Bakbatal that still only costs 2,000 gold for those who are not rich, but there are other things that just do seem more expensive overall. On to the juicy features. Holding onto enemies is so incredible. You can climb into mini bosses, swing at them, and they react accordingly. You can pick up and throw staggered smaller enemies, which is hilarious. As a fighter, it was really fun to jump onto the ogres and swing at their heads and hold onto their fur. And like I said, they do react. They'll try and throw you off. They'll try and slam on you. It's crazy. I think they did a great job with how the AI reacts to that. Combat to me was always really fun. Pawns do a fantastic job of responding to your commands, as long as they don't have that dragon plague, as like I said. They always heal when you need, they follow you well, and use their active skills very smart. I've only had pawns get stuck in a few areas where I really push them to their limits, and I find them very smart about their skill use during combat. Even if you don't ask for heals, there are sometimes that they'll still come heal you. They are good about reacting to different enemy techniques and their weaknesses. They do a pretty good job about that. When pawns go down, you are able to pick them up to relocate them. There is a cool mechanic in this game where if you have 2 or even 3 pawns down and you're able to finish a battle, you can go pick one of them up, pick 2 of them up, put them all down next to each other, and you're able to revive them simultaneously, as long as they're close together. Though some people aren't a fan of games with a heavy focus on adventure, I really enjoyed the freedom I had to go anywhere and feel like I was able to conquer the challenge. There are some mini bosses and world bosses that I had to run away from, but in many instances I could go back and conquer those after changing some gear, getting new pawns, grinding a few levels. You really do create your own story here and you choose where to go, and there's not much that bars you in terms of difficulty or abilities. You just go and do what you want to do. Although microtransactions do exist, I feel the need to say in this review that they are completely optional. They were never presented to me in my face as a pop-up, a prompt, a subtle hint. I think that alone is a juicy feature for me. And I think the people raging about microtransactions are heavily overreacting. You can get all the things that they're selling in-game, and all of their microtransactions are also just a one-time purchase. So even if you did want to buy them, nobody's going to be getting crazy on their economy, having so many ripped credits or whatever they're called. And it's a single-player game. It's not going to be pay to win. On to the improvements. There is only one save file as of this recording, but it is confirmed to be on the way. They've heard all the people wanting that back from other games and things like that, so they have responded to that. That's good. They've been transparent about that. I know there was a lot of combat jank in the first game, even though I didn't play it, but I would still have liked to see some improvements to combat to modernize. Things like dodge on every class, a lock-on mechanic. I don't even know if the right stick, if you click the right stick, I don't know if it even does anything besides recentering your camera. I think they should utilize a lock-on mechanic if there's no other use for the right stick. Performance, you may have heard, is not great on console or PC. That's led to many negative reviews, but personally for me, my frames inside cities was about 45 to 60 FPS. And outside the main cities was reaching anywhere from 65 to 100. So we had a very large range of frames for me, and I am running a Ryzen 9 5900X, so I have a lot of cores available, and it doesn't matter what you have. I think this game, it's just, the CPU optimization is not great. So if you can deal with that, the 45 to 60 or the 65 to 100, you're golden. Play the game, it's fun. But if you want to wait for some performance fixes, do what you do. There is a lot of NPC pop-in because of the CPU issues. Again, the devs have released a statement that they will try to address the frame rates and the pop-in largely caused by the heavy CPU load. Hopefully as time goes on, that will get fixed. The relationship system seems relatively undercooked. I didn't experiment with it too heavily, so this could have been fault of my own. But the game doesn't really explain it much either. Enemy variety is lacking. After a short time playing, I'd mastered the weaknesses of the enemies in the first area, only being presented with slightly more challenge when I reached Batal. I would love to see more enemies be added into the mix later in the form of DLC or just a content update, though I'm not sure if that's planned or not. Seeing how many of the NPCs are unique, I just think it would be awesome to see more of the enemies be unique as well. In conclusion, although this is a review in progress and I haven't finished the game at the time of this review, I do feel the story has been really interesting to me. And every time I do talk to somebody that involves the story, I have been interested in what they have to say. I feel I have a good grasp of things now. Many of the side quests have been memorable, and I'll be honest, the game started off a bit slow, and the initial confusion I had from some of the design decisions was a bit unsettling to me. But after I cleared those hurdles, I was, and still am, having a blast. As I stated prior, this game lets you choose your own story. Who do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Will you stick with one vocation, two vocations the whole time? Will you jump around, play with all of them? All of these decisions are up to you as the player, and I believe Dragon's Dogma 2 excels at being a true role-playing game in an era of gaming where people will call nearly anything an RPG. Regardless of performance issues, this game is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to pull up a couple screenshots and landscape pans that I did look at in the time I played, and I cannot deny the fact that I stopped in many locations to look around at the beautiful landscape. Off screen, on recording, it's just a beautiful game. I loved it. I will end off by saying that the exploration formula was perfect to me. They have nailed the subtle incentive to visit new places because you never know what you'll find. Even when there is an incredible loot or a new piece of gear or a new sword or something, I always enjoyed the scenery surrounding new locations and the random encounters we had on the way. As for my rating, I'm going to have to give it a 7 out of 10 in its current state, largely because of the frame rate issues and the confusing and slow beginning. If you can get past those, I do think the game excels at what it's trying to do after you figure out the quirks. However, should the performance issues and a few other things be ironed out, Dragon's Dogma 2 is easily an 8 out of 10, and I think anybody looking for a true adventure RPG will feel satisfied in their playtime. Anyway, that's it for Dragon's Dogma 2. I appreciate you guys watching today. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and for future reference, we do have a Horizon Forbidden West PC port review on the way. That's not going to be hugely comprehensive of the game, more or less just, hey, here's the PC port, it's great. Anyway, that'll be soon, but I'm appreciative of you all watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.